Okay, YouTube, it's time to review Danny Brown's Atrocity exhibition. Now, I kind of quietly reviewed his old album from 2013 back when I first started, and this album came out in the fall of last year. So, the thing about Danny Brown is he is from Detroit, Michigan. He's actually been dropping albums since 2010. He kind of has similarities to like Stevie Stone and I'd say Jaron Benton and a couple other people, just because his releases are generally beneath the radar. So this album, I think it was kind of critically acclaimed somewhat. It definitely had praise towards it, but the thing about it was this only hit 77 on the Billboard 200. So that means first week when it came out, it was the 77th best album out of 200 that were around that time, and it sold about 7,000 or some odd copies. Now, obviously, for an underground release, this is decent, but for the most part, I think this album was pretty much ignored. Now, it's the same thing with what happened with Old, and anything before the two albums that he dropped before that got next to no attention, even though in kind of internet community and that sort of thing, he's actually pretty praised. So it's kind of a curveball that gets thrown at you, but this album is mainly backed by the three singles that came out with it. Now, Kendrick Lamar is on here, Absol, and one other cat that's also on the song Really Doe, but it's not the amount of guests is not what backs this project. There's not really Schoolboy is not on here besides maybe backing vocals, and there's not terribly amounts of people who are also around this time who could trade barbs with him and kind of keep it more interesting. This is an underwhelming project. I mean, I think I liked Old better than this from what I remember, and it kind of seems as if he's overwhelmed by the effects of his lifestyle somewhat. But I mean, really, that's what kind of hinders me from liking one song, which is the song Tell Me What I Don't Know. But in a lot of ways, this album still has its style to it. I definitely do appreciate the style that goes on. So I'm going to talk about Really Though. That one, Earl Sweatshirt is another one who's on there. So fantastic production. I think you'll like that one. It's probably the most immediate song to go for. But I actually like Pneumonia better. That one just has like a real hypnotic type beat to it, and it just felt as if there was something wrong with the track. That one was intensely interesting. Out of 15 songs, I wound up liking 6. But that one, it was released as a single. I would pay more attention to that. I think most people are going to Really Doe just for Kendrick and Absol, and that's not even the best song on here, but it is good. I mean, I definitely feel like you'll probably appreciate it for the big party of a song that it is, but there's really only one song that's like it on there. When It Rain is kind of the standalone song, and that's another one. That one kind of sounds muddy, this real kind of disturbed song. I'm okay with that one. Not as much as Pneumonia, but it does have its purpose. And I like the idea of what Danny Brown does for his singles. I can safely say most of the time if someone drops 3 or 4 singles and I only like 1 or 2, I don't support the project as much as when I like all of the singles, and that's definitely the case this time. So it kind of leads me to believe, part of the problem, I've tried reviewing Kendrick and I've tried reviewing J Rock, and I'm going to try Absol, but the whole thing is they kind of take an approach that takes emphasis off the production and more off the slamming and gut wrenching lyrics that they have, but that's just not my style. So obviously hearing Kendrick and Absol on a song like this, it makes you wonder why the hell they don't do this all the time, because that really is a standout. That's a highlight of this album. And so between that, I feel like Rolling Stone is another one, but none of the production on here is really ever as good as Pneumonia. Get High with Be Real. Be Real handles the hook, and that one feels like something I don't consider it an immediate smoking song as much as I feel it's kind of I mean it feels more like you're doing it on more than just an occasion. It's not like, oh, I haven't done this 3, 5, 6 months. It's like, no, this is everyday shit. And that's kind of the thing. It just doesn't grab you. I almost didn't like the song Get High, but then I listened to it and it was kind of like, yeah, I can see that actually being the way it's supposed to. So, but Rolling Stone is such a song that I kind of would have liked to seen more from Danny Brown. It seems that this is kind of an alternative hip hop and an experimental hip hop release, but the problem with it is the experiments he does are not, they don't excite throughout the whole album. So really, just the most electronic and depressing music is where he really shines through. So this album, because I like 6 out of 15, is gonna get a 4 out of 10, and I would say, obviously, if you're just going for the singles, if it's just like, hey, I might have heard this on the radio, well, you've got 3 good songs to look for. But even so, it's an underground project. I mean, I'm really starting to kind of dig up some of these underground greats that have been here for the past decade, meaning the 2010s decade. And it's just interesting seeing how it works. I mean, it's the same thing I've thought with Jaron Benton, Hobson, and a couple other of these cats. Is they do have some interesting things that I wasn't hearing, 8, 10 years ago. So it's good that this emphasis is seen, but it just doesn't do well on an album front. I mean, I was really looking for like album cuts just like Pneumonia, just like Really Though, just like Rolling Stone, that said, well, how can you realize that that was a good song, but then not do that 6 or 7 more times, which is really the only problem. But the social score, I'll give it an 8, just because it did have 3 hits, and that's well put together. I mean, once again, I do recommend paying more attention to this. And can this record be topped? The answer is yes, by a decent margin. And the future, this came out in the autumn. So subscribe for more fun.